All right, Penn State fans, Johnny McGonigal, Bob Flounders here on March the 1st. February's gone. It's also Combine Week, the NFL Scouting Combine Week. Penn State's got a slew of talented players out there. Johnny McGonigal is actually joining us from his luxurious suite in Indianapolis. He's already having a blast. I don't even want to know, Johnny, what you're doing at night. That's between you and the rest of the media contingent. But I'm happy you're out there. I'm sure you're having a great time. What does Indianapolis look at? What is Indianapolis like during Combine Week for the fans?
It's a circus, Bob. I mean, so I drove in yesterday, got in like around dinner time yesterday, and driving in from Pittsburgh. And you're just, you walk around town. It's like, oh my God, like there's something here. Obviously, there's something going on. But it's one of those where, Indy is such a walkable city. Like everything, Lucas Oil Stadium, the convention center, which is where all the interviews are held. Like they're all within like a 10 to 15 minute walking distance of like all the hotels everyone stays at and all the bars everyone goes to. So there are like probably 4 or 5 bars that pretty much everyone from media to coaches, executives, whatever, that everyone goes to eat and drink and do whatever. So you're just seeing people like, out and about that you wouldn't normally see. So it's a fun time, but obviously a lot of work to be done, not only for the coaches and executives evaluating who they're going to be taking upcoming here in April, but for all of us, interviewing players and stuff like that. And yeah, like you said, a slew of Penn State guys here, 7 of them total. Joey Porter Jr., Ji'Ayir Brown are the 2 big headliners, but you also have got PJ Mustipher, who I spoke to today. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon. Joey and Ji'Ayir will be talking on Thursday, so we'll be talking to them then. Brenton Strange, Mitchell Tinsley, and Parker Washington will be talking on Friday with those skill guys. And then Juice Scruggs on Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stick around for Juice. I think I got to head out of town early. But talking to those 6 guys will be really good. And looking forward to seeing how all of them perform as well. Because they're here for the workouts. They're here for the interviews. They're here for the experience. And it's a really cool one for them and a really important one at that.
Yeah. Before I ask you about PJ and some other Penn State news, I have to ask you, because I was thinking about you. I was like, I wonder if you didn't by any chance go to Jonathan Gannon's availability as the Cardinals head coach and heckle him as an Eagles fan, did you?
No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to Jonathan. Couldn't do that to myself, my own dignity. No, I chose not to do that. And yeah, I got in too late on Tuesday to pop by Howie Roseman's press conference. I actually wanted to ask him about Miles Sanders, but I wasn't able to get here in town early enough. We'll see what Miles and what his future with the Eagles and in the NFL is, where he ends up. But no, did not pop by Johnny Gannon's press conference. Did not heckle him. Did not ask him how he contributed to blowing a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl.
Well, I admire your restraint. I don't know that I would have done the same thing, but I think you did the right thing. Hey, so I saw as we're taping this like Tuesday at 2:00 on Wednesday, I saw some stuff on social media about PJ, and there was some stuff on Twitter. He looks really good. He looks like he is. Yeah. And I remember seeing him in July before the Big Ten at the Big Ten Media Days. He'd just eaten like, a 20,000 calorie meal to celebrate passing his conditioning test, and he looked maybe a little bit bigger than he did lately. He looks good. Everyone said he interviewed great, and he was great at the podium. No surprise if you've Penn State fans know what a charismatic guy he is. But what did you kind of learn from PJ? What did you ask him? Any news coming out of that?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Big Ten Media Days, Bob, because he was asked about, hey, you were here, in Indy for Big Ten Media Days in July or whatever it was, and he was saying, yeah, that was fun, but this is business. That he's here, it's a business trip for him. It's an important week, important few days to get in front of those coaches, and again, not only work out but interview. And he seems like the kind of guy who would be really good at that in terms of breaking down not only film or whatever's thrown at him, but just getting to know him. He's a stand-up guy, and so I think he'll hold himself well in the team interviews. He did well in the media interview. No surprise there at all. Asked about everything from his injury in 2021, coming back from that, winning the Rose Bowl. A lot of interest around, potentially linking up with his brother, Sam, who's an offensive lineman with the Chicago Bears, went to Notre Dame. He said he'd welcome that. He said he'd welcome going to the New England Patriots because He actually got to work with Bill Belichick pretty closely out of the East-West Shrine game in Las Vegas because the Patriots were coaching one of the teams, and he delved into that a little bit. I asked him about John Scott, because John Scott, defensive line coach since we last recorded, left Penn State for the NFL, taking a job with the Detroit Lions, and then his potential successor. But before we delve into that, what PJ said about John, he basically said, this is a guy who helped me along the way, through the injury, through just workouts, through, technique, everything that you would want out of a position coach. John Scott provided, and this is going back with PJ. I mean, he was recruited by Sean Spencer and initially coached by Sean Spencer before he left for the league. So yeah, he's been around for a while. He won't be around for the third defensive line coach in James Franklin's tenure. He got out just before that, but he hopes it's Deion Barnes. And I asked him about Deion because he's a guy. He's obviously a young guy, but he's been on staff for a few years. Players love him. Recruits love him. Former Penn State defensive lineman who's worked with that line pretty closely over the last few years as a GA. And PJ couldn't stop raving about him and saying, he actually said, I think Coach Franklin should hire him. I think he should do that. So we'll see. We'll see, if that ends up being the case. But, he's got a pretty good resume and he's got a backing too, a lot of support. Because I put out a video of PJ saying that and breaking down why he thinks Deion could get the job. You look at the response to that, on social media, the number of people who are, liking it or whatever, and it's not, it's the players, right? It's Shaka Tony, it's Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, guys from this current team, guys from the past, that really want to see Deion get elevated into this role. So we'll see if he gets that opportunity.
Yeah. Also, just wanted to point out, I think a lot of Penn State fans also remember Deion. He was a heck of a player at Penn State. And one of the Super Six, I think, of Penn State fans, some people remember the Super Six. That's SUPA. Six. I don't know if everyone can name the Super Six. I think I can name at least five. But he was one of those guys. Played part of the. I think they came in 2012 or recruited in 2011. Played in 2012. He also played. He did play for James. Really disruptive player off the edge, and he's made great strides. Really. In the next chapter in his life, which is college football, as from kind of a different perspective as a developer of talent, as a recruiter, hopefully as a coach one day. I think Johnny. I think technically, is he an analyst right now at Penn State? I think that's his official title, but I don't think there's any question that should James Franklin decide to promote him or make him the defensive line coach, I think there are a lot of current Penn State defensive linemen and former Penn State defensive linemen that would be very happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Deion, he was a graduate assistant for 3 years. So Franklin hired him away from Northeast High School in Philly, where Deion is an alum, and that's where he kind of got started as a coach and as defensive line coach and a D coordinator. Hired him away from there in 2020 as a GA, and you're only allowed to spend 3 years as a GA. And so he was, kind of maxed that out, and Penn State wanted to keep him, and they hired him in an offensive/defensive analyst role with it's kind of even a longer title than that. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but so he's still on staff. But yeah, there's been calls, from, like you said, former and now current players to have him get that boost up. And I think the knock against him, or at least if any detractors against him being elevated, being promoted, would be that experience. He's never coached in the NFL. He's never coached in the NFL. He's had internships and stuff, but it's not like John Scott, where John Scott worked with the New York Jets for 2 years and was a defensive line coach in college for a while. Sean Spencer as well. So, but I think his age could actually be a positive when you look at a 30-year-old guy in terms of his relatability, especially on the recruiting trail. I remember doing a story on him, I guess it was a month ago now, and talking to recruits in Philly, guys who have interacted with him, not only on a weekly basis, but a daily basis. And they just feel like he gets them, and he's been in their shoes before. And so I think Philly is a huge kind of footprint that obviously Penn State is in, but they want to expand upon. They don't want to see the top guys from Imhotep and St. Joe's Prep to leave the state. They want to come to State College. So I think he would, obviously play a big role in that. And he's a guy that it feels like if he doesn't get this job now, he's going to get a D-line coach job somewhere in college. And, it would be tough if he ends up leaving and going elsewhere and succeeding elsewhere when you had him under your roof already. So we'll see. I think he's a good candidate. I do. I'm sure there's other guys out there, more experienced guys out there too, that James Franklin's going to take a look at. But yeah, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, and with spring practice literally a couple weeks away, I think whatever's going to happen has to happen, fairly soon. Hopefully it won't happen on Sunday night at like 9 o'clock, but you never know. Just real quick on John Scott going to Detroit. I was just on their website. I wonder if Detroit's going to make another move, because I thought I saw on the website they have a defensive line coach and a defensive line assistant. Any thoughts on why the connection between Scott and the Lions and Campbell, I guess, would be the guy I would ask about.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure on the connection there. I was reading some stuff from Detroit, some outlets out there, and it looks like they, I guess their defensive line coach, Todd Wash, left earlier in February to coach the D-line with the Panthers. So that's a recent move, and so they had an opening. And yeah, like John's a guy who has, like I mentioned, coached in the NFL before. I also am pretty sure I think one of his kids just graduated from State High. And so that could be one of those where it's like, all right, they're moving on. Let's kind of move on as family. Franklin even acknowledged the fact that this is a great opportunity for him. James Franklin releasing a statement a few hours after the news broke and saying that he's happy for him. And again, great opportunity for him and his family, and he understands and all that kind of good stuff. Otherwise, been pretty much radio silence in terms of what the next move might be. There was a subtle little nugget, if you will. You know how the position coaches after every winter workout for Penn State, everyone will post on Twitter their competitor of the day, who won the day. Of course, it wasn't John Scott tweeting that most recently. It was Deion Barnes. Right. Again, if you want to read into that. It's one of those with spring camp coming up here. I think was it the 14th? It's coming up in a couple weeks, the start of camp. So they got to make a move quick, and you've got a guy under your roof that seems like it makes sense.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about PJ. I think you and I are only going to chat once this week, and I'm sure we'll talk combine when you come back next week. But you mentioned some of the other guys, and I think after PJ, I think you said you're going to get Joey and maybe Ji'Ayir next in the rotation, and then you'll get obviously to the rest of the guys. I just think in the last week it's been really interesting. I saw you talk with Daniel Jeremiah. There aren't many hotter prospects. Maybe once you get past maybe the top 30 consensus, there aren't many hotter prospects than Ji'Ayir Brown. It seems like a lot of people, the more they see of him on tape, the more they've kind of learned what I think a lot of Penn State fans and what James Franklin and Manny Diaz and the Penn State players have known for a while, that this guy, if you want a guy that could do a little bit of everything and do it well, I mean, there's a lot of talented defensive backs, but Ji'Ayir Brown, if you look at that senior season he had, I mean, what else could the guy have done?
Yeah, you mentioned the Daniel Jeremiah call that happened last week. It was a conference call with, it was 150, 160 reporters on that thing. And you know what? God bless Daniel Jeremiah. Thank you very much for taking the time. We all appreciate it, because dude has so much knowledge. He has put in so much time scouting all these players. I'm waiting for an hour, 45 minutes to ask one question. And I'm glad I waited. I'm glad I waited it out, because I asked him essentially hey, Penn State's three biggest prospects are, Joey, Ji'Ayir, and I said Parker Washington. Kevin, you basically just break those three down for me. And what do you like? What do you not like? What stands out to you? And I was expecting him to go super deep on Joey, which he did. I wasn't expecting him to pull the hey, Ji'Ayir Brown, I think is my the best safety in the draft, because that's what he said. He loves Ji'Ayir Brown. Looking at film more closely, Daniel, he put out a top 50 prospects in the draft towards the end of January. Joey was firmly in that top 50. Ji'Ayir was not, but he said since he released that top 50 that he went back and he finished his evaluation on Ji'Ayir Brown, and he will be in that top 50 whenever that comes out. Said that he just loves to watch him play, flip on the tape. He can do everything and cover tight ends. He said you can see in the Auburn game what he does as a rusher, tough, physical, plays in the middle of the field. Everything we know and everything we've seen from Ji'Ayir Brown. And again, he played corner at one point. He has those skills, those ball skills. He's everything you want in a safety, and he's experienced. He's got that right attitude, the right characteristics you want in a player in the locker room, on the field. I think Ji'Ayir Brown this week too, especially again with these interviews with teams and all that. I think he has an opportunity to make himself some money here in Indianapolis, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up hearing his name called early on day 2. He's not going to be in that first round conversation. Safeties especially just normally don't find their way there. At least it seems that way increasingly, but he seems to be firmly in that day 2 conversation, second or third round.
Yeah, and I think deservedly so. I'm glad to hear that people have kind of caught on and seen just how good that player, just how good he really is and how versatile he really is. I mean, there's box safeties, there's center fielders. I think Ji'Ayir showed in 2022 he can do it all, and I think Ji'Ayir is really appreciative of what Manny Diaz did for him, because I don't know if Brent Pry's defense really maybe showcased all that he can do. And I think Manny was a great fit for Ji'Ayir and vice versa. And you've talked repeatedly about how, what Manny Diaz thinks of Ji'Ayir and on the field and off the field. And that should really translate well, I think, this week in Indianapolis. One guy I wanted to ask you about, because I think he's going to be at the Combine, but I doubt that he's going to be able to do anything, is Parker Washington. If he's available, I think a lot of teams and a lot of journalists are going to be real anxious to see just kind of how he's doing. I think his season ended after 10 games. I think he was dealing with maybe a lower body issue there, and to leave after 3 years. But there, a lot of people in the industry really think this kid's a special player. And if he's close to 100%, we're talking about another player at Penn State who could maybe go the second day of the draft.
Yeah, no, Parker, I'm going to be interested to see, to just talk to him. I believe so. Like, I'm trying to get these days right. We're talking to him Friday morning, and he is on the docket to speak. He's going to be here. What is he going to do workout-wise? Is he going to do anything?
Yeah.
We were talking about that injury, back in, November or December, when he ended up deciding to leave early for the NFL. And we were thinking that, hey, that injury might actually hold him back from declaring. That wasn't the case. But, looking forward to speaking to, just the schedule is it's Joey and Ji'Ayir. They do the DBs interviews on Thursday. So that'll be Thursday. And then, the tight ends and wide receivers and quarterbacks. So maybe I'll go have some mayonnaise coffee with Will Levis on Friday. So those guys, the quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends on Friday. I'm looking forward to asking Parker just about his decision and about the injury, how he's feeling. Mitchell Tinsley as well is another one that I think his stock has risen significantly since the end of the season. The way he finished too in that Rose Bowl with 6 catches and a touchdown. Returned to Pasadena for the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl and impressed scouts there and earned an invite to the East-West Shrine Bowl. And so I was pretty intrigued by what Daniel Jeremiah had to say about him. He was talking a lot about his toughness after the catch, his route running, his speed, snap out of the break. He said he was pleasantly surprised with what Mitchell Tinsley put on film, and he has got an opportunity to show that again here out in Indianapolis. Brenton Strange, another one who left early. We'll see what he's able to do. And then, Juice Scruggs. I think we've talked about Juice and how he was kind of the heartbeat of that offensive line. Not the only Penn State offensive lineman, though, that's been getting mentioned out here. Partly because I've been asking about him, is Olu Fashanu. I went around Wednesday morning here. The DNs and edge rushers and outside linebackers were available, and went around and asked a few of those guys what they thought about facing Olu this season, and some pretty illuminating answers. So that story will be up on PennLive, I believe, Thursday morning. So looking forward to writing that up here once we're done this podcast.
I'm looking forward to reading it. It's Johnny McGonigal with Bob Flounders here on the Blue White Breakdown podcast. It is Wednesday, March 1st. Johnny is in Indianapolis living the large life like he deserves. Johnny, one thing I wanted to get to you before we wrap this up is I just think it's interesting. There seems to be a consensus that if it's not the deepest position, it's one of the top 2 or 3, tight end. And the reason I bring it up is Brenton Strange is out there, but in another year, people are in love with like 11 tight ends, right? And he is one of them. But in another year where maybe it's a little bit more scarce in terms of talent, I just wonder how the depth is going to affect maybe where Brenton kind of ends up in the draft. But the other thing is, I think it may have also impacted Theo Johnson's decision to come back, right? Maybe he got some different kind of advice. And you could be a really good tight end, but if there's 10 other really good tight ends, it really comes down to kind of, a subjective opinion. So I think it's a little interesting, that Brenton's out there and he's obviously a complete tight end. He was Penn State's most complete tight end, but it's a deep class, one of the deepest that I think a lot of people can remember. And I'm just really curious to see if maybe Theo thought about this, and maybe just had a different take on maybe not coming out.
Yeah, and in Theo's case too, we talked about the injury that he had earlier in the season that hampered him a little bit, and it took him a little while to get into the swing of things, and also the prospect of coming back for the 2023 season and being the number 1 tight end and having Ji'Ayir throw to you is pretty enticing from Theo's end. Now from Brenton's end, I remember when we talked to him before the Rose Bowl, they had that media availability at Beaver Stadium, and they hadn't made their decisions yet. Him and Juice and Adisa ended up coming back, but these guys were all guys with decisions. But he was talking pretty openly about how he, got really good draft. What he thought was pretty good draft grades, and it felt like when we talked to him, it's like, okay, yeah, Brenton's going to leave. Like he feels pretty good about where he stands. But you're right, it is a really deep tight end group. I mean, you look at it. Dalton Kincaid of Utah, Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. Darnell Washington from Georgia. Those feel like the big 3, as well as Sam Laporta from Iowa. But even looking down the list, like Schoonmaker from Michigan, you've got Will Mallory from Miami. Having covered Pitt for a few years, I got to see him up close. Yeah. He's a good tight end. Even Zach Kuntz, former Penn State and Camp Hill from Old Dominion, who I'm going to be fingers crossed. I hope I'm able to get to all these guys. Hopefully I'm able to, talk to him on Friday. But yeah, no, it's a super deep class. So we'll see where Brenton lands. And again, sometimes with these guys, it only takes one big combine performance. If he goes out there, runs a really good time, and his broad jump is, if he just hits on all these drills, the 3-cone, and impresses, he can jump up quite a bit and move himself from. I'm looking at ESPN right now, and again, they miss some guys. So like I wouldn't take it completely like dead on, but he's not listed within the top 15 tight ends, which feels like a little off. But it's just a deep group, so we'll have to see how he performs because he's gonna need a big week.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is some of these tight ends that I know the NFL they're really infatuated with the pass catching tight ends that are matchup problems, and that's great. But you also there is value there for a complete tight end. I really think there is, and I think that there is no way that there are 10 more complete tight ends in this draft than Brenton Strange. So to your point, if he can do some good things testing wise, and he can run. Run a pretty respectable time. I think you could see him. I think you could see him as a riser in this tight end draft class. But I just think the fact that he's a dirty work tight end that can also be a receiver at tight end, and I don't know that I would say that about some of the guys that you have already mentioned. So maybe people are sleeping a little bit on Brenton Strange, and I hope he's a guy that really has a terrific combine. Real quick before we go, Johnny. If you had to guess, if Joey Porter runs a 40, what are you thinking? He's probably going to, what is he, 6'1", 6'2", 200, maybe 205, something like that. What do you think he can do as a 40 guy?
Oh, man. I'm not sure. Do you know what he ran when he – because I guess they don't run the 40 like every year at Penn State. I don't think they do.
I heard he can move. But I never really got an official time.
Yeah, I just doing a quick Google search here because I'm curious. I don't want to I want to get some sense here. And apparently he's targeting the high 4.3s.
Woo!
If he's able to get there,
Yeah.
I mean, he's already a first round guy. And I think at this point, he's kind of in the big three of corners with Christian Gonzalez from Oregon and Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. So if he can run in the 4.3s, and then you look at his arms, his go-go gadget arms that are just like ridiculous, those things defy like physics. And then you just put on the tape and you see him making plays, and then you see him not doing anything because teams are scared of throwing at him. If you're a team in the top 10, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I saw that, I think it was Mel Kiper. Yeah, it was Mel Kiper Jr. Projected him to go to the Steelers at 17. How convenient, right? With his dad being a Steelers legend and all that. And I've seen a lot of mock drafts of him going to the Steelers. There's a very real possibility he's not there at 17. There's a very real possibility he's going within the top 10. And if he runs in the 4.3s, it's that's some freakish athleticism.
Yeah, Johnny, I'll tell you what. You know what 4.3 means? That's Troy Apke fast. Am I right?
Yes. It was interesting, though, because when I asked Daniel Jeremiah about those Penn State guys, the first thing he said is what he expects out of the Penn State guys at the Combine is that they run fast. Because he said that they always do. And he wanted to give credit. He couldn't remember his name off the top of his head, but Dwight Galt. And now, obviously Galt has already moved on. But like Penn State guys always run the 40 fast at the Combine. You go back throughout the years, it's like a tried and true thing. So wouldn't be shocked if Joey goes out there and puts on a show, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Mitchell Tinsley runs a good 40. So I think there's ample opportunity here this week for these guys. And again, like to have 7 guys represented here, I think is a really good thing for Penn State. They're one of, I think, 12 teams with at least 7 out here. They had 8 last year. So, as long as you keep churning these NFL guys through your program, I mean, it's the recruiting, it kind of sells itself, right? Obviously Alabama does the same thing. Georgia does the same thing. Ohio State, Michigan. But you want to be talked among those guys, among those teams, programs. So, it's a big week for Penn State, not just for their prospects, but for them as a program.
Yeah, 2 things before we go. I will guarantee the Penn State fan base there will be more than 7 guys, Lions, at next year's Combine. I just did a mental check of what they have coming back, and I feel pretty confident it's going to be more than 7 at next year's Combine. The other thing is there's going to actually, speaking of strength and conditioning, there's going to be an availability up at Penn State later this week where we're going to get a chance to talk to he's in his second year now. Chuck Losey is going to probably give us an update on how some guys are doing and how the young guys are looking. So something to look for on PennLive. While Johnny is holding it down in Indianapolis, I'll be up at State College giving Mark Brennan a hard time, but also finding out about some of these young talented Penn State players. So looking forward to that. Johnny, enjoy Indy and all its splendor. Don't get stuck in any bad weather. Everyone check out his stuff on PennLive. It's going to be coming fast and furious. And if Joey Porter runs a 4.28, look out.